Just quickly, before we begin, I want to say thank you all for helping the channel reach 4,000 subscribers. I'm lost for words. The support the channel has received not only this year, but the last few years is astounding, and to think at this point last year, we hadn't even hit 2,000 subscribers. To now have doubled that is insane. I just wanted you all to know, whether you're a new or continued supporter, I'm grateful for every single one of you, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Five years after the release of the original God of War, this Greek mythology epic would conclude, at least in regards to the main trilogy, with the release of God of War 3 in March 2010. And wow, would it leave a lasting impact. I can still recall my first playthrough like it was yesterday, as my 13-year-old self had his jaw permanently cemented on the ground from beginning to end. Concluding this epic tale of revenge, experiencing the fast, fluent, and violent combat, the brutality of the boss encounters, it all to this day has stayed with me, to a point where as soon as God of War is mentioned, this is the game I think of. So needless to say, going into this retrospective, I was ecstatic. As soon as this series was voted in by my lovely subscribers, I was foaming at the mouth to revisit my favourite entry in one of my favourite series, as well as what I'd consider my favourite game on the PS3. But as per usual, it has been quite a while in between playthroughs, and as much as I want to believe my nostalgic memories are fact, I need confirmation, and so here we are. It's been 11 years since God of War 3 released, and despite my personal nostalgia, the question today is, how well does God of War 3 hold up today, and is it worth your time revisiting or playing for the first time? Let's find out. Just quickly before we get started, this is my 4th video on the God of War series so far. So if you've just found the channel, I recommend catching up on this series of retrospectives. Click the link in the top right hand corner or in the description below for the playlist, and what the hell, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Alright, let's get started. The story for God of War 3 continues immediately on from the end of God of War 2, with Kratos ascending Mount Olympus with Gaia and the other Titans to destroy the gods of Olympus. The Olympians immediately rush into battle, which sees Poseidon launch from Olympus, performing a death blow against the Titan Epimetheus, and then going on to manifest himself as a giant water being aided by several hippocampi or water horses. Poseidon and his seahorses begin to attack Gaia, trying to halt her progress up Mount Olympus, causing Kratos to engage in an epic battle against the god of the sea, drawing Poseidon into Gaia's grasp and launching through Poseidon's godly form, leaving only the god remaining. Now weakened, Kratos walks up to the fallen god and beats him savagely, leading to the most brutal use of the L3 and R3 buttons I've ever seen, and ultimately killing the god of the sea. Poseidon's corpse falls into the ocean below, and with his death, the sea levels rise, causing a flood to seemingly engulf the entire world, and destroying all of mankind that were unlucky enough to be below the top of Olympia. With Poseidon now out of the picture, Kratos returns to Gaia as they reach the peak of Olympus, where Zeus is angrily awaiting his son. This meeting doesn't last long though, as Zeus launches an almighty blast of lightning, blowing off a massive amount of Gaia's arm, and sends both Kratos and Gaia falling down Olympus. Kratos attempts to save himself by digging his blades into the Titan as she begins to climb her way back up to Zeus. Furious, Kratos pleads for Gaia to help him, but she reveals that Kratos was just a pawn to serve the Titans' revenge against Zeus, and now that they've reached Olympus, they have no further use for him, refusing to save him and leading Kratos to fall straight down into the river Styx. Within the River of Souls, Kratos loses his blades and powers, weakening him upon his arrival in the realm of Hades. It's here where Kratos encounters the spirit of Athena, who claims to have reached a new level of existence since he slayed her, and is now willing to help Kratos seek his revenge against Zeus despite dying to save him in the previous game, because she now sees a new truth. Athena grants Kratos the new blades of chaos to survive the underworld, and tasks him with the quest of extinguishing the flame of Olympus in order for Kratos to finally be able to defeat Zeus. But first we need to escape Hades. As we make our way through the underworld, encountering a few lost souls and finding the 3 judges of the underworld and the chain of balance, Kratos meets the spirit of a young girl he believes to be his daughter Calliope, though he is mistaken and the young girl is named Pandora. Pandora begs Kratos for his help, but he refuses and heads on his merry way. Soon after, we meet Hephaestus, craftsman of the gods, who is down in the underworld for a currently unknown reason. Kratos asks Hephaestus about the flame and is warned that it is a fool's errand, killing both man and god alike, which Kratos ignores, reclaims the blade of Olympus, and now it's time to take on Hades himself. Hades, seeking revenge against Kratos over the deaths of Athena, Poseidon, and his wife Persephone, attempts to steal Kratos' soul, which he ultimately fails, and so a battle begins. Hades and Kratos are evenly matched for a time until Kratos steals the claws of Hades and rips out Hades' souls and absorbs it, leaving Hades dead and releasing the souls of the underworld. On our way out of the underworld, we once again encounter Hephaestus, encouraged by Kratos' work so far and asking for the Spartans' help in rescuing his daughter, Pandora, who was taken away when Hephaestus was banished to the underworld by Zeus. Again though, Kratos refuses this request despite Hephaestus' attempt at relating father to father. With Hades' soul, we use a Hyperion gate in the underworld which transports Kratos to the city of Olympia, and now back amongst the living, he is up against both the Titans and gods. Shortly after arriving, we catch up with a wounded Gaia barely hanging on to the side of the mountain, begging for Kratos' help, and in a sort of poetic justice, Kratos' response is to cut off Gaia's hand and let her plummet to the bottom of the mountain, presumably to her death. Whilst traversing the city of Olympia, Kratos shoots down Helios' chariot, defeats the Titan Perseus, finds the wounded god and removes his head from his body for a nice light source, which we'll need since the world has now plunged into darkness. A little further along our ascent, we are taunted by Hermes, who mocks Kratos for his past sins, and so we make chase up the chain of balance and conveniently straight to the flame of Olympus. Kratos discovers that the flame is holding Pandora's box within it, and Athena informs us that he never received the power from within the box, and that only with Pandora can he dispel the flames and reach the power within. Outside the chamber of the flame, we once again find Hermes, finally catching up with him and amputate his legs, acquiring his boots, killing Hermes, which unleashes a plague upon the world. With these new boots, Kratos reaches an intoxicated Hera, who ignores his request for Pandora's location and instead summons Kratos' half-brother, Hercules. Hercules, jealous of all the attention Kratos has garnered from their father Zeus, and attacks us, which goes about as well as you'd expect. Skipping ahead a little further, and we stumble across Aphrodite, who is indifferent about the war on Olympus and leads us back to her estranged husband, Hephaestus, through another Hyperion gate. Hephaestus is unwilling at first to allow Kratos to essentially burn Pandora to death, but eventually sends him out to Tartarus to retrieve the Omphalos stone, claiming he can craft a new weapon for the Spartan capable of killing Zeus, but secretly hoping Kratos will die in Tartarus. Kratos finds his grandfather Kronos irritated over Gaia's death, attempting to eat Kratos, which allows us to get the Omphalos stone from within the Titan and slay him on our way out. We return to Hephaestus, angry over the fact he was sent to his believed doom, but the craftsman sticks to his promise and crafts us a new set of blades called the Nemesis Whip. Hephaestus tries to electrocute Kratos, which backfires and leads to another dead god, as with his dying breath he pleads for Kratos to spare Pandora, which he ignores. Continuing on further, we encounter Hera once more, drunk and engrossed in misery as she mourns the death of her children and the plants, taunting Kratos and calling Pandora a whore, leading Kratos to snap her neck in a blind rage, destroying all the remaining plant life. We finally reach Pandora's labyrinth, find its creator Daedalus strung up and delirious, believing Kratos to be his son, Icarus. We traverse the labyrinth, slay the giant scorpion, and finally find Pandora. They work together to escape the cube. Kratos plunges back down to Hades to destroy the chain of balance, allowing the cube to ascend to the chamber of the flame. Kratos has second thoughts about letting Pandora die to unlock the box, and in his indecisiveness, Zeus appears and holds Pandora hostage briefly before tossing her aside to duke it out with Kratos. We are seemingly victorious and try to stop Pandora once more, but when taunted further by Zeus, Kratos lets her go, unlocking the box within the flame. Unfortunately, the box is empty, and again, Zeus and Kratos duke it out, this time being interrupted by the still alive Gaia, who eats both Zeus and Kratos. Both of us fall to Gaia's heart, and Kratos impales Zeus with the blade of Olympus through Gaia's heart, killing the Titan, and apparently Zeus as well. Believing the job is done, Kratos lets his guard down, allowing Zeus's spirit to attack and leave us defenseless, attempting to replace Kratos' emotions of rage and anger with fear. Luckily, the spirit of Pandora guides Kratos back, this time equipped with the power of hope, I guess. And finally, Kratos slays Zeus once and for all with his bare hands, ending the reign of the Olympians. Athena congratulates Kratos on his long-awaited victory and requests that he turn over the power he claimed from Pandora's box, which he reveals that there was nothing inside. Athena doesn't believe Kratos, telling us she imbued the box with her own power of hope along with all the world's evils, and demands this power back. Kratos rejects Athena once more, impaling himself with the blade of Olympus and unleashing the power of hope to whatever of humanity remains, which infuriates Athena as she leaves us to die. In a post-credit scene, Kratos is missing from where he was last seen, with a trail of blood leading off the edge of the mountain, leaving the player to question where Kratos has gone. And that is where the trilogy concludes, and so the story of God of War 3. First of all, holy hell, there was a lot of story to go over here, and the first thought that comes to mind after all of this is what a conclusion. I mean, what an epic, badass, heart-pumping, pure, vengeance-fueled, enormous scale adventure we just went on. On its own, is it the best story of the series? No. But it isn't on its own. As the final chapter, the ending of Kratos' story for now, I think they did a great job at captivating the player from start to finish. I'd say the story overall is probably the most simple of the trilogy, focusing more on just non-stop god-killing satisfaction instead of really fleshing out Kratos' character much further, except for some more fatherhood aspects and showing a caring nature amongst all the blood and guts with Kratos' connection with Pandora. That relationship is also set up really well and doesn't feel forced or rushed. They took their time to build this relationship, and that's why, despite how much Kratos wants Zeus dead, you understand why for a moment he almost chooses to save Pandora, further fleshed out by Kratos' guilt ever present for the loss of his own daughter. I think why I enjoyed the story so much though goes back to the constant praise I have for this series' Greek myths, and getting to see and interact with Santa Monica's Greek universe, and in God of War 3 they really brought the big guns. We get an up close and personal look at the gods Poseidon and his hippocampi, Hades, Helios, Hermes, Hercules, Hera, Hephaestus and Zeus, titans like Gaia, Perseus and Kronos, visit the hellscape of Tartarus, swim amongst the souls in the river Styx, witness the destruction this quest for vengeance is causing to the world with every god's defeat, and as a fan of the mythology, it is seriously wet dream quality stuff. I love Santa Monica's twist on these incredible myths, like Hercules for instance is a real highlight with his jealousy towards Kratos, quickly briefing the player on what he's been up to in this timeline and just the pure feeling of strength he exudes, or the reason Hephaestus has fallen from grace in the eyes of Zeus being because Kratos poisoned Zeus's mind with fear after finding Pandora's box, due to Hephaestus hiding it poorly on Kronos. Even just in general, Hephaestus gets a lot of screen time, allowing his character arc to get properly fleshed out, and makes him the one god I did feel a little bad for when slaying, even though, you know, don't mess with Kratos. Giving the player an explanation as to why the gods turned on Kratos so heavily after the original game and tying it to opening Pandora's box makes sense as well, and thankfully they did this because the shift in attitudes was a little strange without this explanation. These little details and twists on the mythology not only hooks me into the story here, but makes me want to learn more outside of the game, which is an aspect of the series that I truly do love. As much as I love the simplicity of this story though, and the pure destruction of this tale of revenge, I did notice quite a few plot holes this time around that, whilst didn't hamper my enjoyment of the story, still were noticeable. For example, Kratos not believing he has the power to kill a god and being disheartened at the empty Pandora's box is a bit of a stretch considering, well, by that point we've killed any god who has stood in our way. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief in regards to Zeus maybe having some sort of power, but still, this seems like a strange plot device for a game centered around slaying gods throughout. This one isn't as big of a deal, but Kratos kills Persephone before the original God of War, and Hades didn't seem to have an issue then, so why now, you know? We also aren't really given an explanation in regards to Athena's new so-called higher being, and the fact that she was willing to die for Zeus, and then so quickly after help Kratos kill him, is another odd story decision. Don't get me wrong, these are issues in the story, but again, they didn't bring down my overall enjoyment. It isn't the greatest of stories on its own, but as a conclusion to Kratos' time within the Greek myths, it is captivating stuff. In a lot of ways, the story here is most comparable to a popcorn action movie. Non-stop action, giant set pieces, and just pure excitement driving the plot forward, and the story does a great job at emphasizing just how destructive Kratos is being in his quest for vengeance. And by the end, you get the feeling Kratos is finally close to forgiving himself for his past sins, but not before he completes his quest to kill Zeus. The story here in God of War 3 may not be the most complex, but it is thoroughly enjoyable and will hook you in from beginning to end, and concludes the story for now brilliantly. When it comes to the gameplay of God of War 3, the mantra of "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" strongly applies. Where this may be a negative for some, it's not an issue for me at all, which is saying something given I'm playing the series back to back. The gameplay still revolves around the same formula, but it just feels like the best version of the God of War formula in my opinion. But this claim has no merits until I explain myself, so as always, let's break it all down. The combat for God of War 3 is smooth as butter. It's fast-paced, fluent, various, and violent. As I said though, it doesn't stray too far from what we've experienced, so let's talk new additions. Kratos has access to 4 weapons, 4 magic abilities, 1 per weapon, and 3 more items, further adding to your options in combat. The Blades of Exile are a series staple, but here they whip around effortlessly, have a good chance of stunning enemies, feel like they pack a good punch, and have the best magic ability in the army of Sparta, which, as the name implies, sees Kratos summon his fallen Spartan brothers to form a protective barrier around him, launching spears, and through upgrades end up also launching a barrage of arrows around the arena. The Claws of Hades acting similarly to the Blades of Exile, but can release souls to attack enemies, as well as the soul summon magic ability that allows you to pick between enemy souls to summon and attack. The Nemean Cestus are two-handed gauntlets that pack a massive wallop, and the Nemean Roar ability acting as a shockwave. The Nemesis Whip, once again very similar to the Blades of Exile, but having the benefit of electricity and have a noticeable speed increase with the Nemesis Rage ability that shocks surrounding enemies. Then we have the Bow of Apollo, the Head of Helios, and the Boots of Hermes that act similarly to magic abilities but recharge on the downside of being more stun or range abilities as opposed to big damage dealers. Lastly, we once again have a rage meter, this time called the Rage of Sparta, in which Kratos uses the Blade of Olympus. First things first, yes, it is a little disappointing to have 3 weapons so similar to one another. As much as I enjoy using the Claws of Hades and the Nemesis Whip, when you stack them up against the Blades of Exile, they do end up losing out more often than not because of the Army of Sparta ability being the best magic ability by far compared to summoning an enemy briefly or shocking enemies on top of the fact I know how the Blades of Exile work, and what combinations to use in what situations more so than the new blade weapons. That's not to say I never used the new blades though, because as I said, this is now my 4th game of the series in a row, and I did want to check out the new toys. I enjoyed the oomph of the Claws of Hades, smacking down on enemies, creating a small area of effect with floating skulls seeking enemies. I actually used the claws quite a bit. I just wish the magic ability was a little better, as the summons AI more often than not seems to miss enemies. I love the speed of the Nemesis Whip, it's got great potential to stunlock enemies with an attack you can hold down, and the shock magic ability isn't too shabby either, making for a good potential option in combat, but again, very similar to the Blades of Exile. The Nemean Cestuses though are by far my favourite weapon of the game. These bad boys pack a massive punch, pun intended, and they act very similarly to the Gauntlet of Zeus from Chains of Olympus. It's powerful and somewhat limited in range compared to the chain blades, but through leveling, this can not only be improved, but they cover ground really well, and with the shockwave stunning enemies, they make for a great competitor to the Blades of Exile. And it's a weapon you need to use against specific enemies, so it's just best to have them handy regardless. In regards to the items, the Bow of Apollo is probably the most frequently useful, with explosive barrels, a quick rate of fire for ranged attacks, and a flame charge, but I also quite like the Head of Helios and blinding massive groups of enemies. The boots weren't an item I used much though, as with the new addition of grabbing enemies and charging them around the arena into other enemies, well, it serves a similar purpose, but I have less control with the boots. There is a lot of potential variety here in God of War 3's combat, and all these options flow seamlessly together. Swapping between weapons, launching attacks and combinations with one weapon, and continuing on with another, using the magic abilities, items, along with the ability to launch Kratos over to an enemy to continue a combo, it makes for, again, a fast-paced and fluent experience that makes the combat so much fun, especially when mixing in the Rage of Sparta, and the finishing moves with the button prompts taking up less of the screen, making the player use their peripheral vision for these button prompts and letting you focus on the violence you're causing. God of War 3 is where the bosses truly came to play though, and there's a lot of them to go over, so let's not waste time. Like the series so far, God of War 3 begins with a boss battle. It just so happens this time though it's against the god of the sea himself, Poseidon, accompanied with his hippocampi. And what a battle to begin the game. First of all, the setting for this battle being on Gaia means the arena is constantly moving and changing. 1 minute Kratos is grounded and the next he's dangling from Gaia's arm. The battle against just the hippocampi are much like the Hydra and Basilisk fights, and act as a great tutorial boss battle, initially not posing much of a threat, letting players come to grips with the controls and systems at play, until we progress further and face off against both Poseidon and his pets. I really love this portion of the fight as you smack at the claws of the hippocampi, gripping on Gaia's head, launching up at a pinned Poseidon, and having a lot more to worry about in regards to his attacks. The fight culminates in an epic traversal QTE leading to a once again brutal eye gouge prompt as the camera switches from first to third person to truly demonstrate the violence. And that's Poseidon done. As a tutorial fight, there is a great balance here between learning and actually having a boss battle that poses a threat. Poseidon's attacks can deal a hefty amount of damage, and having the fight end the way that it does just oozes satisfaction. But it teaches the player a lot of much needed mechanics as well. Next up we have Hades, and I love this fight. Due to Hades' size, despite the seemingly large arena, it actually comes across quite claustrophobic, and since his attacks are rangy and smack the ground with great power, yeah, it doesn't feel like you're dealing with a lot of room, which makes for a real feeling of tension. The longer the fight goes on and the more you weaken Hades though, the more this feeling is emphasized with more projectile attacks, attacks from underground, summoning Cerberuses, and all of this leads to an interesting little tug-of-war battle over a chasm into the river Styx. This is where we ultimately steal his claws and Hades quickly reappears from the dead, leading to the final phase surrounding an even smaller arena, dodging attacks taking up most of said arena, and swinging around back to deal damage before ultimately stealing the god of the underworld's soul. Again, badass conclusion to the fight, which is very much a common theme, but just overall, a true highlight amongst the bosses. The constant feeling of tension, the big damage Hades can deal whilst acquiring a new weapon, and trying to learn how to use it on the fly, and despite already slaying a god, just the more one-on-one nature of this fight makes for the first true god-slaying moment, and this is all good stuff in my books, and makes for one of my favourite fights in the series. Next up is Helios, which isn't really a boss fight at all, but does have a badass beheading and a unique block the light segment, and he's a god, so what the heck, I thought I'd include him. Hermes is in a similar boat to Helios, but the fight is more so a chase revolving around platforming, which I really did enjoy. It's a great breakup in the pace for the bosses and shows the player that not every god will be this epic battle, which fits the mythology. Hermes does have a brief battle with Kratos, which isn't the best if I'm honest, as he just dashes around hoping to hit us, but again that conclusion is just worth everything as we amputate the god's legs. Next up we're back to the actual battles as we face off against Hercules. The initial phase is just battling minions, so nothing too special to begin with, but once Hercules comes down himself, the fight truly begins. Hercules is a slow and lumbering sort of foe, but as his strength implies, he packs an absolute smack. Once we steal the Nemean cestus from Hercules, he fights alongside his minions, but ultimately gets his face pounded into oblivion in another brutally gratifying ending. This fight is alright. Not the best, but Hercules does pose a threat here. I just wish his attacks varied a little more, and he didn't telegraph said attacks so heavily to make for a more tense battle. Next is the battle against the Titan Kronos, which is more of a set piece than an actual boss fight, as it consists on Kronos, but has you battling the standard enemies, leading to you impaling Kronos through the chin with his own harness. I do enjoy this encounter quite a lot, and they do a great job at highlighting just how massive the size difference is between Kratos and his grandfather. I just wish there was more actual battling with the Titan. Hephaestus isn't really a boss either, but he's a big god who ever so briefly we battle, so I thought I'd chuck him in here too. Next is the battle against Scorpius, the giant scorpion queen who guards the labyrinth. This is a fight that requires the use of the Neem Incestices, so immediately I'm a fan, but this is a pretty basic fight. Smack at the legs, Scorpius gets stunned, wail on her, rinse and repeat until death. Bit average. Finally, we have the battle against Zeus, and again, this is one of my favourite fights in the whole series. I remember this fight being a real challenge back in the day, so to my surprise, the initial phase isn't too bad. The same strategy as the last Spartan applies in this phase, so you best be good with your parries by this stage, but Zeus's various attacks, both aerial and ground based, are no joke, and he packs a serious punch, so you need to find openings to attack and be ready to either block or dodge at a moment's notice. The second phase is brief, more of a wait until Gaia eats you both, but the third phase is where that memory of challenge was legit, because this is stressful. Zeus is quick, there isn't a lot of opportunities for more health and magic. Zeus will duplicate himself, and if you're not careful, he'll heal himself as well. I love this phase because it's tense, it's a true challenge, and it honestly can feel overwhelming at times, but learning his attack patterns, again utilizing the parry function, saving your magic for the right moments, and when it's all said and done, it makes impaling him all the sweeter. The final phase of the fight takes a first person perspective as we smash the King of the Gods into a bloody mess. Overall, the bosses are a great time here. There are some fights that, whilst aren't the best battles, they are visually an absolute joy to experience, and fights like Hades and Zeus just elevate the series to a new level. And after the journey we've been on with Kratos up to this point, it's awesome to see how deep his vengeance runs and how blinded by revenge he truly is. As always, the combat isn't everything God of War has to offer, and like in God of War 2, God of War 3 has more moments of just platforming or just puzzles that help make the game feel a lot better paced. The platforming is some of the best of the series. There is a lot more platforming challenges from the very beginning, and that's because we have access to the Icarus wings from the jump. We also now have the ability to grapple and hang off the harpies to make it across larger gaps, the Hermes boots allowing us to wall run, though this is only for specific walls. The biggest new addition to the platforming though is the flight challenges. Similar in concept to the Pegasus riding from God of War 2, but this is a pure adrenaline rush. These sections see Kratos traveling at blistering speed, usually have falling boulders to look out for, as well as trying to squeeze through tight openings, and they are so much fun. They aren't too frequent, which makes these sections feel unique, and due to the mix of challenges and tension with the fast-paced nature, they're an absolute blast and a real highlight when the game is all said and done. In regards to the tried and true platforming of the series, well, you know what to expect there, except there are 0 planks to walk on this time around. Again, a highlight has to go to the Hermes chase, as the integration between boss and platforming challenge and the tension of trying to save Pandora is down to the wire sort of stuff, which is all good fun. The puzzles aren't too different than what we've come to expect, but the challenge does seem to have gone down a smidge. Maybe I've just played this game more recently or more often, but I didn't get stuck at all here, and that's saying something as I'm not the quickest at seeing most solutions. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the puzzles though, because I had a great time here as well. I loved puzzles like Hera's Maze, as it constantly messes around with perspective and time-based challenges, the room with the various portals and a single ballista with many hidden secrets, and the many puzzles within the labyrinth are all great stuff, and with the improvements to movement with blocks, it makes for much faster paced puzzle solving. The music minigame is strange though, I must say, sort of takes me out of the moment. Overall, the gameplay for God of War 3 for me just feels like the ultimate experience in the series. The combat is incredibly fast paced with a ton of options to play with and mix it up. The bosses are massive in scale, making for visual marvels, and fights like Hades and Zeus are some of the series' best battles. The platforming is so much fun and makes secret hunting a breeze, and the puzzles, whilst not too challenging, are still enjoyable to solve. I was hooked from beginning to end, and once it was all said and done, I was ready to go back for more. I just think the gameplay here is the series' best when taken in as a whole. So, Was God of War 3 as good as I remembered? Finally, I can answer, yes, it was. God of War 3 continues and concludes Kratos' chapter within the Greek myths in an epic fashion. The story hooked me in from start to finish. The combat is so gruesome and filled with potential variety that makes it constantly feel fresh. The boss battles are frequent injections of absolute brutality, the platforming is such a joy, and the puzzles, again, help break up the action and pace the game out more as a whole. God of War 3 is still my personal favourite game in the series. It's still one of my favourite games on the PlayStation 3, and I can honestly say if you could only play one game from the series, I'd say you need to play God of War 3. It has some problems, as does any game, and some elements have been done better in other games in the series. But as a whole product, this is my ultimate God of War experience. Thank you all so much for watching. I had such an amazing time revisiting one of my all-time favourite games with God of War 3, and I hope you enjoyed revisiting the game with me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave it a like because it helps let me know that you enjoyed yourself. Comment below your thoughts on God of War 3 or the series in general, as well as any suggestions for games you want to see covered in the future. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Go give my socials a follow if you fancy, at MayorHairBear, and I'll catch you all in the next video.